So here we are today, Coffee with Composers, and it usually takes a little bit for people to kind of file in, but welcome to our virtual living room here if you're here on the replay or if you're here live. And I am super honored, Raluca, to introduce you today. I know you're a Romanian pianist, composer, arranger, and modern hymn writer, which is super wonderful. Raluca Bojor.
Thank you, Amy, for having me on your show.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, today I just hope our audience here just is inspired and motivated to learn more about the music of modern creatives. And we've got some special things in store because not only do they get to hear about you as a pianist and a composer and an improviser and be inspired by what you're doing, we also have some ways that listeners today can learn more about how to take their classical tools, those piano learning tools that you've worked so hard to acquire, and all the technique and all the skill, and turn it into some more tools for improvising, which I love. So, I was thinking that we could start a little bit at the beginning just so people can get to know more about you. So, the first question I had was, how did you get your start in music? Kind of what age you were and how that journey started for you.
I guess, like most of us piano teachers, we started pretty young. I
Yeah.
started at the age of 6. When did you start?
Yeah, I was 7, so similar.
Yeah, so around the same time that kids start going to school, first grade, that's when I started taking piano lessons. And my first teacher was a cousin. But after that, after a year, he said, you need to, if you're going to take this seriously, you need to be in a like more rigorous curriculum, not just me coming to your house once a week. So my parents enrolled me at the local like conservatory music school for little kids,
Yes.
and then you just go with the program for 12 years.
That's neat that it's kind of, would you say that culture of music is quite rich? You were in Romania at that time, is that correct?
Yes, I grew up in Romania in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I was born after communism, but
Yeah.
the education system was still very much the same like it was during communism. So the music school that I attended was paid by taxpayer funds. So my
Yes.
parents didn't have to pay anything extra.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? What a neat way to do music. I'm sure there's like benefits and disadvantages that we could dive into, but I think it's so neat that that's so important culturally for that as well. So I love that we get to say hi to Heidi right away.
Heidi! Hi!
And Heidi has been such a wonderful supporter here on the channel, and I even hear she's diving into some resources from you, so that's wonderful.
Yes, she's in our group for piano improvising. And we'll get
Yeah.
to that later, I'm sure.
Yes, we will. So it's so good to have you here, Heidi. What a treat. So if you're listening in live or if you're here on the replay, I was thinking I had this same question for our audience is how did you get started in music? So if you want to drop in the comments how old you were, if you started as a young beginner, or maybe your journey is just getting started, you can let us know. So the next thing I was thinking about is did you let's see here. Did you improvise at the piano already? Oh, sorry, this is for someone else. Our question is, how did you always improvise music at the piano, or did that come later in your music journey in that span of those 12 years kind of thing?
It definitely came later because the piano and I had a very strong love hate relationship.
Yeah.
Because no one told me that you could express yourself freely at the piano. Our post-communist piano lessons were very rigorous insofar as you must practice these pieces to pass the exam at the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay, but what if I want to write my own? No, everything that's good has been written. You practice. Okay, but then the opportunity to learn to play by ear came in church. So at church, because I was already attending a Baptist church where music was the core of our worship other than the sermon, it was inevitable that I would play piano in church. But as we all know, church music doesn't come in the same shape as classical music where everything is written ahead of time. If you
Yeah.
have a hymn, it's probably written SATB in the hymnal, but what do you do if they need it in a different key? If
Yeah.
they need it a little more embellished, if they need different instruments. So in church, it was that I finally got to observe how people just make it up. And my
Yeah.
cousins, my uncles were able to make it up, but they didn't know how to explain it. So when I showed interest that I too want to learn how to make up music and fiddle around the piano and be able to play in church at a drop of a hat without having to practice certain arrangements and purchase them,
Yeah.
my parents then invested in me traveling to the United States for the summers when I was a teenager, and I attended music schools in Nashville, Tennessee, and in Alabama, where they taught me how to use chord theory and the Nashville number system to play by ear in church. And I was embarrassed that I couldn't just play gospel freely and I could only play classical. And they actually said, the classical training is the best foundation you can have to
Yeah.
pursue any genre in life. It is better to start this way than the other way around when you can only play by ear, but you don't know how to read sheets. If
Yeah.
you already know how to read sheets, it's very little left for you to make the leap into improvising.
Mhm. I absolutely love that you reference a couple things. So firstly, I think it's super special that even though you had this rigorous classical program, which was obviously fantastic for your technique, if our audience has seen you play, you have these wildly fast fingers and exciting ability to fly through octaves and all those things that you've learned in your classical training, which is super inspiring. But I love that the church music also opened doors. And we've talked to some other composers on this series, like Angeline Bell mentioned the same thing, that the church music actually gave her that license to pursue improvising and that culture of improvising. And the other thing you touched on, which I hope will resonate with our audience, because many here might be also classical pianists, I love that you don't disregard that, because sometimes, I don't know if anyone in the audience feels this, but sometimes it feels like, wow, I have all this training and then I sit at a piano with no music and I don't even know what I could play. I've felt that I do improvise as well, so that's been freeing. So if you're here in the audience today and you've ever felt that, like, oh my goodness, I could play a Beethoven sonata but I can't play an improvised version of Happy Birthday, then you're in the right place today. And so I love that you open that up. So the next thing I was thinking is, you have found a very specific niche in the realm of music composition. And I love that you're focused on keeping hymns alive. So I was thinking, how did that become a very specific focus for your energy and dedication as a composer and arranger?
It was a series of trial and error. When I started my YouTube channel during the pandemic, because I feel
Yeah.
like more than half the current channels started in the pandemic and
Yeah.
boredom, I was making videos of every possible genre that I could
Yes.
think of. Like, if you scroll back on my YouTube channel, you will find Disney, you will find ABBA, you will find video games, you will find church music, you will find contemporary Christian, you will find old hymns, you will find organ, piano, ukulele. I was doing everything in hopes that one video will take off and make
Yeah.
me rich, and it didn't happen. And
No.
then I enrolled in a coaching program
Yeah.
for musician entrepreneurs. And the first thing the coach said is, you got to narrow it down. I'm like, but how will I reach 1 million people if I narrow it down? He said, you'll
Yeah.
be surprised how the algorithm will work in your favor once you narrow it down.
Yeah.
Pick one thing that your heart beats for. And I'm like, I don't care that much about Disney or pop but I do like church music. So then it was in that coaching program that our coach challenged us, myself
Yeah.
included, to think deeply why you choose the specific genre. And in my case, it was like, because no one does hymns anymore.
Yeah.
At least the churches that I've attended in my adulthood, hymns are becoming less and less popular, and
Yeah.
contemporary music is taking their place. And I always strive for a balance. So
Yeah.
there are already enough pianists out there doing covers of contemporary music, I wanted to give hymns a fresh spin, harmonically, technically, so that pianists, other pianists out there, can also keep them alive in their church.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. And it brings me to a question for our audience. So, if the audience is here, I'd love to hear about a musical genre that you're excited or passionate about. And I love that Board Piano Adventures. I know we have messaged lots on the YouTube platform. I don't actually know your name, but welcome. It's so good to have you here. And this pianist here is a wonderful improviser as well and does lots of beautiful covers that are also very inspiring. So it's good to have you in the chat today. So if our audience, yeah, I'd love to hear what genre kind of would be your focus if you had to choose just one. And Raluca touched on something that's really tough for creators. I would say lots of content creators struggle with this, is how do you choose just one? Because often creatives are multi-passionate. So I love that you actually did the hard work of saying, hey, I like so much and I can do so much, but I love that not everyone, it can bring new fresh life to those traditional hymns. And then even you focused on lyrics. You've done some wonderful blogs on the history of hymns and gotten into the words and the theology behind them. And then you've turned it into a really special niche. So I love
Well,
that.
thank you for reading the blog.
Yes, yeah, it was my pleasure. They're very, very inspiring. So another thing is we've got a few comments here. Yeah, thank you. It's such an honor to have you here. A wonderful, inspiring voice in the community. And Heidi answered early on that she started piano at about 14 years old. And I love that. I love that you started in your teens and then are now teaching and bringing so much life and joy. And Heidi is leveling up her own improvising skills, which is also really cool. So Heidi says hymns are probably her passion as well, and also enjoy peaceful, flowy pieces. I love that. That's so fantastic. I was recently challenged too because, as some of you know, I had a type of stroke that made it so my right hand wasn't able to be used. And that was a decade ago that I was a one-handed pianist. And recently I was saying to someone, oh, I just wish I could get some more fast pieces in my hands. And this wonderful human said, you know what? Lots of people do fast, showy pieces. You do slow pieces well. There's no apology in that, So I thought, oh, yeah, I can enjoy slow repertoire. So I love that Heidi also loves that peaceful, flowy pieces. So those ones suit me. But Raluca, your fast-paced pieces are so inspiring for me. And I will link in the video description some of the ways people can find what fun pieces you have and how you get there in your course.
Oh, thank
So
you. I appreciate you mentioning that.
yeah, you bet. And I love, yeah, more people need to hear that. Yeah, just finding what brings you joy and finding what you can share with the world. And I think on YouTube, it's a competitive space, but it's also a space where you can find your own voice and you can share music that brings value and inspiration to your own life and also touches the lives of others. So I think that's so important there. Yeah, I have a friend who undervalues her piano playing for being too simple. Yeah, and it's true. I think it's something we all struggle with, and sharing music always puts a magnifying glass on our insecurities, I think. So it really builds in character, right? To be sharing music. I used to think that too, that you always had to share music to the top of your ability. And I realized too that when I'm in a living room, say, it's not always the right spot to bring out the Pathetique Sonata or bring out some crazy wild stuff. Sometimes those simple, beautiful pieces are so valuable.
Yeah, it
So,
depends what context you're in. It
yeah,
depends what you're trying to communicate. Are
yeah,
you just providing background music at a restaurant? Then you don't bring out the Rachmaninoff and the Pathetique.
yeah, exactly. So I
So
love that.
simple is such a vague term. You just have to find the right context where it is totally appropriate to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So there's a place for all the music that we love.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good message today. So then the next thing is and this is so cool because it applies whether someone is focused on hymn playing or whether they're focused just on improvising. So we'll find both in our audience today. But for you, Raluca, can you tell us when you're arranging a hymn, how does that creative process begin for you, or does it always change?
I got ADD. I don't know. It just comes and my brain goes wee. But but there is some method to the madness.
Yeah,
Mm, mm, mm. It starts with the genre. What genre do I hear for the particular song? What
yeah,
genres fit the song? Because, like Heidi said in the comments, she likes flowy pieces. Well,
yeah,
some hymns or any piece work really well to make them flowy, and some don't. So, after listening to a lot of other artists who sing the same repertoire, you develop an intuition as to, okay, Amazing Grace works well in most any style and genre possible. So
yeah,
then I can experiment on Amazing Grace. I can say, let's make a ballad. And then I borrow ideas from other ballads out there, like, okay, long arpeggios, very slow right hand leaps.
yeah.
But if I want that same Amazing Grace to be a fast gospel peppy song, then I use the gospel sounds and rhythms and offbeats and arpeggios and moving bass lines. And I personally tend to like those better.
Yeah.
But there are some songs that a gospel dub version would completely ruin them. Let's think Abide With Me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would not work well in the same genre as Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. So the creative process starts with you got to know the original really well. You got to know the hymn. You
Mm.
got to know the context for which it is used in the church. Is it a call to the altar? Is it a praise to God who for how great he is? Is it about fellowship? Is it about sending people out into the world? What is the core message of the hymn? And then matching that with appropriate musical genres, which can be one, two, many.
Mhm.
And then you just play, mix, and match until you find something you like. And I have several hymn tunes that have been arranged in different styles because they're so versatile.
Yeah. Well, I love that you address, first of all, you have mass amounts of creativity. You're very open about the ADD, and the way that your brain works, which I love too, because some of that creative aspect can be a challenge, but it can also bring about many, many ideas. And some of the challenges is always just bringing it into something concrete, right? Which is the tricky part, which you've managed to do. um, and so I love that you're saying having that genre or having that style in mind is helpful. And I love Raluca has a recent upload of Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho. And I love that this one has way more hints of that jazz style. So I know you've done it before with kind of a wild gospel style, but this one had some unique. The bass line was really fun.
The difference between this and other previous arrangements of mine is that I forced myself to write it away from the piano. Because when
Wow.
I write at the piano,
Yeah.
I give into muscle memory and
Yes.
everything feels used,
Yeah.
recycled. So for this particular arrangement, I forced myself to write it away from the piano using only my brain and the playback that finale offers.
Yeah.
And I had to practice my own arrangement, which for me is death.
Yeah.
I, I had to take so many takes of that piece video and audio because I was embarrassed of myself. I'm like, why did I write such a hard piece? But that's probably good.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you address that too, because if there's arrangers here in the audience that are taking multiple takes of their own works, I think that you're normalizing that too. And like it actually can be really hard to have all these musical ideas and then to try to polish and hone it and have it just the way you want it. And I'd also love to hear, if you're here in the audience and you are already a composer, do you love to write ever away from the piano, or is all your work done at the piano? And I know from interviewing, I think about 17 or so composers so far, I'm hearing such a mix of both. But one thing I am hearing a lot of is that idea of starting with a goal does help in completing it. So you never have to have a goal when you sit down at the piano. But if you want to produce actual sheet music or actual arrangements that are finished, then it sounds like that's a very helpful thing to do.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I love how Board Piano Adventures here says, I'm always practicing my own arrangements. Yes. And you have also some octaves and arpeggiated patterns and things that are challenging. So even if they come from your own mind and brain, now you know that that's a very normal part, and that Raluca agrees with you that it takes a lot of hard work to polish them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And write both. Oh, yeah. So they
Mm-hmm.
also write both away or
At
at.
and away from the piano, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My blind eyes here. So this brings us to, you have a fun surprise bonus for our listeners today that can get them just kind of adding to their improvising toolbox. And as we talked about earlier in the stream, a lot of it is putting those classical piano skills to work in fresh ways. So can you tell us a little bit about your course and the fun surprise we have in store for listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So, backstory for the course.
Yeah.
I have a friend at church who's a classically trained pianist. Wonderful person, wonderful musician, can play anything, and she has the sheet music ahead of time.
Yeah.
And she was invited to join the worship team, and she didn't know what to do with the chord charts or the lead sheets. No idea. Different language altogether.
Yeah.
And just starting that conversation with her and learning how she thinks about music, how her brain works, what her experience is like, what her obstacles are in her mind, and just showing her some tricks here and there and seeing the light bulb go on in her head, I realized, what if I made that available to more than just you? So that's how the idea of this course started out, based on my friend at church who wants to play by ear but doesn't know how, has this strong classical training, has done all her scales, knows all her key signatures, but hasn't made that connection between following the score and making it up based on a skeleton.
Yeah.
So my course, my online course, is designed to help classically trained pianists who can already read sheet music and have done their scales and arpeggios and know their key signatures, how to transfer all of that information to be able to play on a worship team following chord charts, or playing any pop song, really, if you have the lead sheets in fake books, if you're familiar with the pop fake books where you all have the melodic line and chords above. So that's my goal with the course, to help classically trained pianists become confident in their improvising skills via theory, which we assume we already have a basic knowledge of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that you're really addressing this course to people who probably feel like a little bit inadequate. They're like, okay, I don't know how to bridge the gap between being a pianist with sheet music and being one who's exploring. And then I also love that you're saying you're going to be able to help people identify chords quickly on sheet music, so that aspect of analysis. And that was really freeing for me when I started to play worship music and I started to do harmony with the conservatory. I was like, oh wow, this is building blocks that I do know. I know these chords. So just the fact that I was like, oh, okay, this hymn has these chord structures, or this pop song, it made it so much easier to fill in the blanks for me, because I wasn't as much one to play just by ear. But you know what? I'm learning too. And I love that as musicians, we can keep expanding into places that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable, but that become so fun and life-giving.
It's like learning any other skill. The beginning is always uncomfortable, but if you have the right kind of training, you can learn that new skill. You just have to adapt the teaching method if the first option doesn't work.
Yeah. And I love that you address the fact too that it is a different language. And sometimes we prevent ourselves from feeling confident at improvising because we just think that when we sit down, we should be able to play at the same level as we were as classical pianists. And I think it's a good reminder too that we're allowed to be beginner improvisers. Your pieces might not sound like as high of a level as you've done in a different genre or a different style.
But it can get there
Yeah.
with the right trajectory, with the right equipment. And
Yeah.
I like to tell this to people whether they pick up a foreign language or a new instrument or a new skill, like playing by ear. It's like, have you ever seen a toddler that's embarrassed because they didn't use a grammatically correct sentence? No, they'll just yell loudly until they get what they want,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
with bad grammar, but they'll yell it with confidence.
Yes, yeah, we're gonna all be playing with confidence here and trying new things,
And
which I
it's
love.
okay to make mistakes.
Yeah,
That's why you have a teacher to help you. Yes, all of my students in my course are also part of the Facebook group, so
yeah,
we try to maintain that communication open because
yeah.
I value human connection,
Yes.
especially as a teacher. I value human connection. So if someone has a question, I want to help them. I don't want to just redirect them to another YouTube tutorial out there.
Yeah, and I love again that's so valuable to have that connection and I love that we can do that here today just getting to know you and more about what gets you excited about teaching and what gets you excited about playing. So for those here live and for those on the replay, I'm going to be editing the video description to add some of Raluca. She has some free arrangements. She has some coloring sheets which I just love because to me that's like that busy brain that needs something to do. And I was like, oh, I love that so
I
much.
sometimes color in church.
Yeah, actually, my harmony teacher always said she went to a very traditional church, and how she got so good at harmony is she would always be doing the SATB analysis in the hymn book.
Me too.
So the busy brains unite, right? Which is
I love
fabulous.
it. I want to meet this person.
Yeah, and oh, you would absolutely love that. Sandy Havilar here in Campbell River, and she was an absolute godsend to me, very patient, and would let me show up with all my frazzled, unfinished homework and work through it patiently each week to get
Oh,
me through all
an
those courses.
angel from above.
She really was. So today there'll be a couple videos and PDFs that Raluca has gifted the community to get you started with your improvising. And even if you already improvise, I listened to the videos and was finding value and going, oh, I love this. And even the inspiration to not think of your classical training as something that you just throw over your shoulder and disregard when you improvise. You can actually use those skills. So that's really cool.
Oh, and I see Heidi is active still. Sorry to say, Heidi, you've already seen all of these free materials.
Yeah,
Nothing new for you.
nothing new except you're going to be so inspired at this chat. And so I love that Heidi's saying she loves the course group. So the Facebook group
Yeah, I
that goes
still
with
owe
it.
her an explanation on diminished chords. I'm working on that.
That's right. That's okay. So it's been an absolute honor to hang out with each of you here today and with Raluca today. And so if you have any questions, this is a great time to pop them into the chat. Or if you have any good takeaways of what you were inspired to hear today, feel free to add that whether you're here live or whether you're joining us on the replay. And thank you so much, Raluca, for being here. It's really an honor.
Thank you, Amy. This was
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, well, you certainly made it easy. I feel like this really was a living room visit, and I love that part of a live stream. And of course, having the audience here live too makes it's so nice as well because we really feel like you guys all just joined our virtual living rooms here from the US and Canada. I'm in Canada. Raluca is Romanian, but she's in the US right now. And I know Heidi's just a hop, skip, and a jump over the ferry. So I would need to take a ferry to go see Heidi, but she's actually in the same province as me. And I don't know where the others are from, but if you want to drop that in the
Oh, I
comments.
didn't know Heidi was from Canada.
Yeah, she's a fellow Canadian. And I love that we didn't even know we were so close to each other. So that's kind of fun. So Stay tuned for that edit. The videos, the free videos and the PDFs are already in the video description now, so you can check those out after this video. And thank you all for being here. A complete honor. Okay, we'll see you later.
Bye.